Welcome to my second Q&A video. I originally said I was going to do this because I was about to hit 30k subscribers, and now you wonderful people have got me to almost 50k subscribers. So first of all, just a massive thank you to all of you. And now let's look at the questions. Recently I've received a lot of questions asking about how I deal with the copyright in my videos. So this is a really good question, and one that I wanted to answer for a long time. Because copyright is a massive issue on YouTube right now, particularly for people who do content like this, which is music education content, where ideally you want to be able to play the original recordings of the artists that you're talking about. And a lot of music educators on YouTube like Adam Neely and Rick Beato and Paul Davids have been saying how frustrated they are that they can't play original clips without their videos getting a copyright strike. So people have been asking me, well, how are you using the original recordings in most of your videos? Most of your videos analyse the original songs and you don't seem to have your videos taken down. So that's the first misconception. Getting a copyright strike doesn't mean that your video gets taken down. Usually it just means that your ad money gets taken away from you. So you've probably noticed adverts on almost all of my videos. But I don't earn a single penny from these adverts. All of that money goes to the record labels who have claimed the copyright of my videos. And, you know, this is really annoying. There's hundreds of pounds of ad revenue there that I don't get, but that's the reason I have Patreon. That's the only way that I survive, is with Patreon instead. It would be nice to have that ad revenue money, of course, but if that's the exchange I have to make to be able to even have this channel in the first place, then I guess that's the exchange I've got to make. There are other cases when your copyright strike results in your video getting taken down, and that happens a lot with the Beatles. So any video of mine that you've seen that's about the Beatles, I probably had to upload that about 6 or 7 times in different versions to try and get a version that would get through the copyright filter. I ultimately have 3 ways that I get through the copyright filter. The first one, which is the most effective, is don't use the original recording. Use a cover, like a live version, or a cover by a tribute band, which can sometimes be surprisingly good. So on some of my Beatles videos, the version you're hearing is actually a version by a band called The Beats, who are an amazing tribute band who do incredibly authentic versions of Beatles songs. So if you haven't heard of The Beats, go check them out. But sometimes there's not a live version or a Beats version of a song I want to use in a video. So what I do then is I try to apply some sort of effect or filter to the original song to get it to get past the Content ID system. And this generally, nowadays at least, doesn't work very well. The only way I've ever managed to get that to work is by using an EQ to take all of the low end of the music off and then applying reverb on top, which, as you can imagine, makes the song sound a bit rubbish. So ultimately I don't like doing that because, you know, there's no point if it's going to sound rubbish. And the third way that I use sometimes is just using really short clips. So if you use a very short clip of a song, maybe just 2 or 3 seconds, usually that won't get copyright striked. But yes, it is really annoying having to dance around all this copyright when all I'm trying to do is say how great these songs are. If you're interested to learn more about copyright and why it even exists in the first place, because, you know, there's a good reason for copyright, I recommend a video that David Bruce did recently about this, which I'll link in the description below. But just a shameless plug whilst I'm talking about this, I mentioned that Patreon is the only way that I am able to make money from this channel. Because if I could use the ad revenue, I would be making hundreds from this channel, but I can't. So if you are interested in seeing this channel last for years to come and for me to explore all sorts of different songs, and you can spare even just $1 or $2 a month, it would mean so much to me if you could pledge anything on Patreon. Thank you so much for doing that. Anyway, shameless plug over, let's look at a different question. Jacob Borg asks, what are some of your favourite artists' album songs that you think are being overlooked, even by the music community? So, I mentioned 10cc last time. I still stand by that 10cc are one of the most underrated bands of all time. But another suggestion is the Kinks. So a lot of people are familiar, of course, with the Kinks' sort of garage rock, proto-punk stuff they did, like All Day and All of the Night, and You Really Got Me, and that sort of stuff. But after that, they did some really interesting, almost like Beatle-ish music, including one of my favourite albums, which is the Village Green Preservation Society. This album belongs with the likes of Pet Sounds and Sgt. Pepper as one of the best examples of late 60s Baroque pop. And, you know, it's a concept album. It's talking about the end of the British Empire and what that means for British identity and hanging on to traditions. It's a great album with some really interesting music on it, so check out The Village Green Preservation Society by The Kinks. So on my video about the 3/4 trick about skipping a beat, I talked about Joan Jett, and a lot of people commented that I Love Rock and Roll wasn't written by Joan Jett, it was written by a band called The Arrows. So this was me being a bit stupid and forgetting to check if Joan Jett had actually written the song. I had just assumed that she did, and I was wrong. But the good thing is that the Arrows version and Joan Jett's version are almost structurally identical, so all of the points that I made about the song stand whether you're used to the Arrows version or the Joan Jett version. But sorry about that, I should have checked and I didn't, so I'll try to be more thorough in the future. The Max8800 asks, now that you've hit over 30k subscribers, what is your favourite Beatles album? So my favourite Beatles album is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and it's been one of my favourite albums since I was about 12, but I don't feel happy just telling you that. So here is a list of all of the Beatles albums in order of my preference. So like I said, number 1 is Sgt. Pepper, Revolver, Magical Mystery Tour, Rubber Soul, White Album, Abbey Road, Help, Let It Be, A Hard Day's Night, Please Please Me, With the Beatles, Yellow Submarine, and Beatles for Sale. Christopher Ryan asks, who are you? Are you in a relationship? Where did you grow up? What things do you do besides playing music? Okay, who am I? I'm David Bennett. I am a music graduate and I've been working as a professional musician for the last 5 years. Are you in a relationship? Yes, I am. Where did you grow up? I grew up in the south of England in a county called West Sussex. What things do you do besides playing music? So I'm not going to lie, most of the things I do are musical, but there are a few things I do which aren't. I like to run, I like to travel, and I like to write fiction. I'm currently working on a novel that I've been working on for the last 3 years, and maybe when it's finally done, I'll share it on this channel. David Defundifer asks, what are your thoughts on microtonal music, pieces that you like? So to be honest, I've never really experimented with microtonal music. I've watched a few videos about it like Adam Neely and David Bruce and Jacob Collier, but I've never actually dived into it myself. I couldn't even name you a piece of music that uses microtonality. If you have some examples for me to listen to, I'd love to get into it. Borendo asks, what do you think of generated music? So what he means here by generated music is music that was created, at least in part, by using some sort of process or algorithm. And I haven't, once again, got much experience with this. The nearest I've ever done to a piece of generated music was I once took the digits of pi and mapped them against the Dorian scale, and then I used that resulting list of tones, a list of pitches, to create a piece of music. But I don't really have that much experience or knowledge of generated music, so once again, if you have anything to suggest, I'd love to listen to it. So this last question isn't really a question at all, but it's a comment that I really liked. Gillian says here, I like to think of Mixolydian as rock major. So what she's saying here is that in rock music, Mixolydian is sort of as commonplace as the major scale. It's like if major scale is default for pop music, for example, then Mixolydian is the default for rock music. Pretty much all rock music features chords drawn from the major scale and the minor scale, so they're blending together those two tonalities. And one of the ways that this gets manifested is in the Mixolydian mode, which is effectively the same as the major scale, but with a tiny bit of the minor scale in there in the form of this flat 7. If you're interested in supporting me on Patreon, you can get all sorts of perks including behind the scenes footage, voting on future video topics, and having conversations direct with me about music theory on Patreon. And thank you as always to my patrons, including the names on screen right now, and a special thanks to Andres Sainz-Diaja, Andrew Brown, Bob McKinstry, Chris Cabal, Chris Lawrence, Christopher Ryan, Daryl, David Defundifer, David Efford, David Spalding, George Taylor, Melody Composed Squared, Nancy Gillard, Patrick Gonzalez, Paul Pagel, Peter Dunphy, Roger Yun and Tim Beaker.